All right, what is up, beautiful people, family legacy funding group? Welcome back to another Motivational Mondays. It's July 1st. It's start of Q3. About to kick some ass this quarter. Let's get after it. Sorry about any background noise. Advance got some music and just some cars driving by. Working at a cafe today, getting shit done as usual. But today's topic we're going to be discussing is addressing tough conversations, right? We'll try to breeze through this. Again, if you guys are new to the page, Motivational Mondays, these are just little opportunities to just kind of talk about little strategies, philosophies, or anything that we could take into our everyday business life to go kick some ass. So let's get into it. So, you know, we're going to kind of talk about how to speak up for yourself and handle these tough conversations, whether it's relationships or business. Being able to be an effective communicator is super valuable. We'll talk about why this is important and how we can actually be a better communicator. So, number one is, most people avoid tough conversations like the plague, right? And for me, I used to as well. I'd let it, if something bothered me, I'd just kind of let it be. But over time, it would create resentment in the other person. And the fucked up thing too is the other person probably doesn't even think they've done anything wrong because you failed to communicate what your wants and needs were, right? I would start thinking about what I would have said or like the comeback of what I would say next time it came up. And when you kind of think that way, you know, when the person does something that bothers you later, you're going to blow up on them because you've been building this up in the back of your head, even though it's not that big of a deal if you would have just kind of nipped it up in the bud in the first place. So, you know, being a better communicator is just going to help you have a better quality of life, right? Expressing yourself is vital. Not just what you want, but what you don't want as well. So this is just going to help you attract more of what you want, what you don't want. Um, the other thing too is just having unfuckwittable, being coming off as more unfuckwittable and not being a pushover, right? If you're Mr. Nice Guy who doesn't stand up for themselves, you're just gonna get plowed through. Nobody respects you. Like you can be a nice guy, but no one's gonna respect you, right? Every time you let somebody walk all over you, you're gonna lose more confidence in yourself, and they're gonna think that they could keep doing it again and again, and by not being able to communicate it, right, you're not setting up those boundaries. So that's why we need to set that on early on because people think they can fuck with you. They're going to keep doing it because you're communicating with them that that's okay behavior. Um, Other big thing is becoming a motherfucking boss, right? Um, Being an effective communicator, that's what it takes to be a boss, right? You can't be everybody's friend. You have wants and needs too, and so do they. And we're creating alignment with people and things that matter most to us, and being able to communicate, hey, these are my values, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I don't like in you. Two things are going to happen: either you become closer with that person and they're going to change with you, or that's just not the right person to spend your time with, right? So I was like starting these off by just going over the clear stuff of why this is important, and now let's jump into how do we actually become more of an effective communicator. So number one, I think is very always important is mindset. So something I like to try to remind myself, I'm actually this topic comes very perfect today because I'm actually about to have a very serious conversation with a business partner that I'm kind of avoiding. But the mindset that I try to remind myself is, right, they might not like what we have to say, and that's okay. But you also don't like how you are being treated. So at the end of the day, whose emotions matter more? This person or yours? At the end of the day, we're all selfish human beings and we care about ourselves. So I'm going to prioritize my feelings over somebody else's because if I prioritize their feelings, then I'm just going to be feeling like shit. And asking yourself, are you really willing to let your well-being be secondary to someone else's, right? And there's nothing wrong with being selfish. Everyone is, as long as you're not taking away from other people or being a piece of shit. There's no problem with being selfish in these situations. So come from a place of love and understanding when you are communicating. You generally want to know why they did what they did and want them to understand how it made you feel. Something that I do too is journal what your needs are to express. Like I straight up write these scripts down of what I'm gonna say word for word, just because it's so easy to, and especially if it's a high intensity conversation, to just not get everything out that you wanted to say, and then now it's still kind of leave resentment because you feel like the other person didn't understand, right? So let's go into the framework. So this is how we actually do it. So this is the framework I work with. Is I call it FFFA. So the first F is framing, second F is facts, third F is feelings, and then the last A is ask. So I'll give you an example of something that I most recently had, right? I was helping a family member, right, get funding so they could get their first duplex, right? They were a little upset at the process, but the reason why they were upset was they told me literally the next day after talking about it a couple times. They said, "Hey, I need the funding by tomorrow because I want to close on this house." And I was like, "What the fuck?" like, I could try to get that. I'm gonna try to get as much as I can for you as soon as possible, but this is very last minute, and we were just kind of butting heads on that. So you know, when we were going to have this uneasy conversation, the way I framed it was, and I applied all this mindset. I journaled what I was going to say, but I literally journaled that I was like, okay, here's the frame. Like, hey, you're my family member. I love you. At the end of the day, like, I just want this to be a very productive conversation. And I just want, I want to learn where you're coming from, and I want you to be able to listen to where I'm coming from. So I set the frame right there, right? We're on a very chill playing field. We're not coming in super mad at each other, even though we were a little upset, but came from a place and set the frame of love and understanding. Then the next thing is a lot of people, they'll just straight up, if you do something wrong, they're just like, oh, you made me feel like shit, like this, that, and the third, but they don't explain exactly how, like, what were the facts. You want to stick to the facts because it will help them understand what the feeling was. And my conversation with this person was, is like, hey, here are the facts. There were only or not even necessarily mistakes, two things that didn't go as according to plan, but we had a backup plan. And here are the facts. You told me you needed funding the next day. And, we just gave like a list of like, hey, here are all the facts of what happened in the situation. You know, you told me with the days in advance that made me feel rushed, and that caused us to not be able to optimize everything. So that's the fact that we weren't able to optimize all the funding because you needed it so soon. And that made me feel like you blamed me once things weren't 100%. So we go over the facts of the situation. Always stick to the facts because that'll help them understand better on why it made you feel that certain way. And for me, I felt unappreciated. I felt like I was rushed, and I felt like it wasn't really fair. And I gave them the facts of, you told me the day before, you know, you freaked out about things that weren't in my control, and that helped them get a better understanding. Like, okay, maybe I did mess up. And what I asked, you always want to have the ask. This is like the call to action, right? The ask was just like, do you understand where I'm coming from? Can you at least take a little bit of responsibility for this? I'll take some responsibility on some of the lack of communication. And in my final ask was just like, I know what I'm doing. Just let me cook, but just recognize, I'm not going to work with somebody who's going to freak out when, part of this is their responsibility as well. So that's the framework. I hope that makes sense. um, but I hope you guys can take this out into your relationships and into your business, everyday life. It's a really dope framework. I used to get scared shitless anytime I had to confront somebody, but this is the framework I use. I start with framing. I talk about the facts, the feelings, and the asks. If you're giving out receipts, um, if you're giving out receipts and you're telling them, hey, this is what it made me feel, it helps them be able to understand your position more. Like, if I kicked you in the shin and you said it felt like it hurt, like yeah, I don't know, that might be a bad example, but it's like very clear where how the facts are connected to the feelings, and if you start with the facts, then it's a lot more easier for them to understand. And if you start with framing before the facts, it helps lower people's defenses so they don't take things offensively. If you set it up right, always have the ask at the end. The question could be like, help me understand why you thought this was okay to do to me or say or act. Um, or your ask is like, my ask is, I want to know that you're not going to do this again. And that way you can hold them accountable for later if it ever does come up. And you can make the decision if you want to spend more time around that person. If they're not um, going through with what you're asking and you're giving solid facts and feelings, then might not be the best person to hang around. But hope that was helpful. Another Motivational Mondays. Let's crush it this week. Let's crush it this month. Let's crush it this quarter. As usual, peace out. Much love. Stay beautiful. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.